except where them hands, where them holes, where them throws, you know what I'm saying? Cecil.
Okay, this is part 8. I'm going to kind of skim through the heightened standards for police officers because I think if you've been through the other parts of the series, you know that basically because a police officer has such a great deal of training and because they're supposed to have a whole bunch of stuff with scenario stress training, that they are supposed to be held to a reasonable standard or a higher standard than reasonable for us regular civilians. Except for when they keep saying, I was in fear for my life. Or it seems like when it comes to, certain segments of the population that we are culturally conditioned to be afraid of, even those of us who are in that segment ourselves. Then they just like everybody else. Oh no, oh lordy. It's no wonder the officer was scared even though he got his taser and his gun and the nightstick and that little billy club thing. Plus he can call for backup. Plus he's got hand-to-hand training. But I will say this though, in defense of police officers, I'm not going to completely rag on cops because cops have certainly shown me a break when they didn't have to, plenty of times. I will say this though, I don't think they get enough hand-to-hand training. I really don't. If you want to hear what a martial artist thinks about police officers' hand-to-hand skills, I don't think they're adequate. I think they should get more. Just like with the military, I also think boot camp should be longer. And you should spend a lot of time training them up like martial artists. Stop this wham-bam, conveyor belt type of training where you just rush these people through and then it's sink or swim. And then you expect them to behave like some kind of monk when they're not one. But see, then again, I'm not a lawyer, plus I don't make the rules. So I gotta read what the law says, because that's what's gonna count, not my internet opinion. Heightened standards for police officers. Subjective evidence of specialized combat training may also be helpful in evaluating self-defense claims for police officers. This section explains that police officers are held to a higher standard when using force, and that subjective evidence may actually make the defendant's case worse, even if it clarifies the case for the jury. Because like I said earlier, perception is everything. In self-defense, the heightened standard for police in some states is that of a reasonable officer. See, they have reasonable man, which is actually supposed to be reasonable person now, and reasonable officer. So that means that they're supposed to be even more reasonable. So I guess if you're stabbing them in the neck, they're not supposed to shoot you, right? I'm exaggerating. And I know that if you stab anybody in the neck, they can get away with killing you because you're trying to kill them. But you understand what I'm saying. This is ghoulish overkill, as they said on Rick and Morty. Here's an example in State versus Smith, where a police officer was convicted in a trial case of first-degree murder. Let's see, the officer chased after the victim, yelled stop. The officer drew his gun and pointed towards the victim and took hold of him and led him to a clearing where he pinned the victim face down and stepped on his back. And the victim didn't show his hands, so the officer shot and killed him. All right, I would see in that case because they're already face down, so they're not a threat. Okay? And they're going into the officer's state of mind, but the whole point is police officers are held to a higher standard, and now they're getting back here to the whole battered woman defense, BWS, where they're saying the battered woman's perception of the power and omniscience of the abuser should give her some slack. But again, what if the battered woman is a police officer? What if the battered woman is a martial artist? What if the battered woman is a martial artist police officer? What if it's a battered man? These days, I think we ought to have a BMS syndrome, battered man syndrome defense, because we have a jury system and a legal system that's rigged a lot of times to favor women over men. But let's look at this though. We're going to start looking at this. Martial arts, the new frontier for self-defense and subjectivity. This comment argues that martial artists will have difficulty satisfying the objective reasonableness component of self-defense because they are trained to perform optimally in confrontational scenarios. Not true at all schools. In other words, a reasonable person would not think an action is required with deadly force. This is ridiculous. If a reasonable person would not think an attack required a response with deadly force, it is unlikely a trained martial artist, a person with additional fighting skill, would think an attack required a response with deadly force. For example, in response to a deadly force attack, an unskilled person's use of deadly force is proportional. In contrast, a martial artist's use of non-deadly force technique to disarm and subdue a deadly force aggressor may be proportional. Any martial artist who responds with deadly force when it would be objectively unreasonable to do so cannot claim self-defense. For reasons explained below, in certain situations, courts should deny such a martial artist imperfect self-defense and the provocation defense as a matter of law. In those situations, if a martial artist kills in self-defense, perfect self-defense should be his only argument for acquittal. If that fails, the court should convict him. I don't agree with that. Not every martial artist knows how to disarm someone who is armed. And sometimes we think we know how to do it, but we really don't, because we may have never had to actually have done it. And even if we have, that's still a weapon. I don't agree with this. That's still a weapon against somebody who is not armed. It's ridiculous, in my opinion, to act like I am like a gun because I have a black belt. That's why they made weapons, to stack the odds in the favor of the person with the weapon. Not because they thought that the person with the weapon was going to come up against a martial artist. Because it's easy to point my finger at you and pull the trigger. You can do that faster than I can get off a gun disarm technique. But again, guess what? I don't write the laws. Guess what? I am not an attorney. I'm a martial artist, and I'm stuck with this. We're stuck with this as martial artists. We're going to continue this in a few clicks.